This time, we'll be taking a look at Darren as he runs during this specific clip. Here he's doing a short run, but I thought it would be interesting to share some insight on running mechanics. Now in this specific part of the clip, he runs at around 190 steps per minute. People typically throw around the magic number of 180 steps per minute to be the ideal step rate, but that's not always the case. I will agree that you can more commonly see that step rate in elite athletes for longer distance races. However, this does not necessarily apply to shorter distances such as a 1500 meter or mile, where you can see it more around the 200 step per minute range, or even sprinting, where elite runners can hit 300 steps per minute. In this case, this seems to be a higher intensity pace, which may be the reason for the slightly elevated step rate. Now, let's take a look at the foot landing. Here he presents with mostly a gentle forefoot strike with an occasional midfoot strike. This kind of landing distributes more forces into the calf rather than the knee. However, one common question I get is whether or not a forefoot strike is the most efficient way to land. Based on some research, there is no specific foot strike that is more efficient. If anything, changing foot strike from the runner's preferred foot strike typically leads to decreased efficiency, at least for the short term. Now let's move on to looking at the foot position relative to the body. Taking a look at the shank angle is pretty much 0 degrees as it is basically perpendicular to the ground. This basically shows that he's not overstriding, which allows for a smoother rollover through the stance phase. Now, let's take a look at the vertical bounce. Here he presents with no abnormal amount of it. Now I will mention that one common misconception of looking at this is that if it relates to risk of injury. Again, research has shown that this is not the case. However, a small vertical bounce is a characteristic more seen in elite runners. I'm trying to keep these relatively brief, so the next thing we'll look at is the arm swing. Now I typically look at this in a front and side view, as arm swing does not just involve forward and backward movement, but here we only have a side view. With this view, we can look at the shoulder movement. Here he pretty much presents with an appropriate amount of it during this pace. This kind of movement typically increases at higher intensity paces, as this can help balance out the increased rotational forces produced when running faster. Now, finally we will look at the head. Here you pretty much want to see a relatively neutral head position, which is the case here. And that's it for the quick breakdown. Let me know what you guys think or any questions you may have.